Howdy folks, welcome to another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series Bio Cup 2019 coverage. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into round 1 of the Bio Cup. We're getting close to round 1 being all rounded up, as they say. So we're going to take a look at some of the entries that have been entered so far and have a bit of a chat about some of them. And then of course we'll be covering pretty much everything that's been entered in that round in the Bio Cup Roundup, which will be following very soon. So stay tuned for that if you want complete coverage of everything that has appeared in the Bio Cup for round 1. Anyway, let's now move on to the first mock, which is by Tino Pautiainen. Look, man, I'm super sorry. This guy, this very, very talented man whose name I struggle to pronounce, and this mock is called Terra Farmer. I think this is a brilliant, very unique take on the theme, and I love it. From the choice of like the color scheme kind of riffing off of Mars Mission, you know, using your orange and white and little bits of black here, I think that's perfect because, of course, round 1 is all about the solar system, and he was given the planet Mars to make mocks of. And I think that's such a clever idea to kind of riff off of the color schemes used in Mars-themed Lego sets and kind of put that in your own planet mock there. That being said, I feel like other sort of sci-fi material has kind of had that very sort of similar color scheme for Mars, so maybe it's not necessarily focusing on that, but of course, you know, that is the case, that color scheme was used in a Mars-themed Lego set. So regardless of where the specific inspiration came from, you can at least draw that parallel there, and that's really cool to see. And yeah, I think such a clever way to do the color scheme for a mock like this. I also think the concept itself is very creative and clever. The idea of calling him, like a terra farmer, you know, this idea of kind of going to Mars and trying to kind of populate it with people, sort of, you know, growing crops and things like that, trying to make it a sort of sustainable, livable planet. I think that's a great way of approaching the theme, and quite different and unique. Not really something that you see every day, and certainly not something that you necessarily see with any of the other mocks in this round here of Bio Cup. So I love that. And especially too, focusing on some of the other little details on here, from these little plant capsules on his back, even the way those have been sort of layered, like this sort of, you know, long sort of half circle or quarter circle here rather. Clever way of attaching them, and a really clever concept of all these little stored plants. And then from the little sort of water spray and scissors and things. And yeah, it's just a really clever way of establishing kind of his mission on Mars, and I love that. And also sort of his weapon here, which I don't think is a weapon and seems more like some sort of watering hose or something, or, you know, maybe something that kind of sprays chemicals to help the plants grow or something like that. Yeah, a really unique take on the theme. I really, really like that. Also quite love these sort of dark orange pieces here with this little stem coming out of them. Perfectly illustrates that this is Mars. You know, you take that away, you can still roughly maybe get that this is Mars, but those colors, I think, very effectively communicate Mars, and just sort of those two little subtle additions there to kind of communicate Martian landscape. I think that's a brilliant addition that really kind of helps communicate, the theme of this, and you know, I certainly think that the mocks that very effectively showcase the theme that they're doing, and you don't have to read the description and kind of figure out what that is, they'll probably do better in the contest. That said, I'm not a judge, I could be entirely wrong here, but I would imagine that that's the case, and I think this mock has multiple cues to really effectively address what the theme is that it is building for. So very cool. And the final thing that I really like about this mock, other than just the whole thing in general, is the really clever helmet here, using this sort of dome semicircle piece here in Keat Orange. Very effectively communicates a sort of space helmet. Really, really clever part use there, and looks great. And that fantastic pop of Keat Orange there complements the orange nicely throughout the rest of the mock, but also is enough of an accent color that it pops and just, looks really nice up against everything else. I think it's cool. So yeah, really, really awesome entry. Probably one of my favorites so far, dude. I really like it. Next one here is by Kelvin Lowe and is called Surfer Uranus. So quite like the unique head design on this guy, kind of giving him this sort of beard and this sort of frizzy hair. He's like this really laid-back surfer dude who likes to surf around the galaxy, man. Like, he's actually really cool. He seems like a nice guy, or a cool dude to hang out with. Quite like that. I also really like the great colors that he's done here. Kind of all the trans blue, or I think that's kind of like trans light blue, because I think trans blue is a bit darker than that, if you want to get technical here. But very similar to kind of the actual colors of Uranus. Pronouncing it differently, because I think that's the correct pronunciation. Really, really clever. Again, really clever color scheme there that very much fits with the planet. And I also like the very unique take on it. You know, the Mars one that we saw before, very fitting for, you know, how humans would probably interact with Mars in science fiction or in, you know, the future, quite possibly. And I like this just being this sort of, you know, interesting kind of out there, almost sort of Silver Surfer inspired for, you know, your Marvel fans out there. Interesting take on some sort of space exploring character. And also just the thing of giving him this funky looking surfboard here, and then having all these other sort of streams of blue coming out of it. You can easily get this really awesome image of him surfing the spaceways on his surfboard, his cosmic surfboard there, or something like that. I think it's a cool concept, and yeah, really fitting for a sort of more out there, funky sci-fi kind of look to this mock here. Very, very different style or theme, or choice towards the theme, rather, that we saw in the last mock by Tino, and this is a very different thing, but both are, work super well for this round of the Bio Cup. And yeah, just cool to see the sort of stark contrast between those two mocks, and yet they both fit the themes quite perfectly, in my opinion. So yeah, I quite like this guy. Also, too, the posing that he's got here, just kind of this dynamic pose. He's kind of leaning back a bit, and kind of just steadying himself on the surfboard, but also probably feeling the space air run through his hair. Of course, that doesn't exist, but we'll pretend it does. Yeah, it's clever posing too. It's really helping to communicate a bit of character here as well. Really like that. So very, very nice work there, Kelvin. Love what you've done. Let's move on to the next mock, which is by Aidan Builds and is called Alien of Neptune. Of course, the planet that he was doing was Neptune, and I think this is cool. The other ones sort of have, to some degree, a little bit more story behind them. Kelvin actually wrote a little bit of a paragraph there talking about the mock, and the last one, you could kind of see a story forming. Whereas this one, it's just an alien that lives on the planet, and that's honestly all you need. You might not be a guy who really likes to write stories, or you don't really need to have a story behind your mock. That's just not what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with just building an alien that lives in the solar system. Yeah, and that's whether that's for the Bio Cup or whether that's for just whatever you're building. You might be really captured by this solar system idea for things that you might be building, and you go, you know what, yeah, I might do some of that myself, and you end up just going, you know what, hey, I'm just going to build an alien. That's it. That's how I'm going to represent the solar system on my own here. And like we see here by Aidan, it's a really nice example. I love the sort of 3 eyes that he's got here and all these funky stems coming out of his head, whether that's hair or whether that's some sort of, unique brain stem or just an appendage on his body or something. I quite like it. It's very alien. It's very out there. It's very unique. And I quite like, too, that there's bits of lime on that kind of reflecting in with the eyes, kind of implying that they might be sort of made of similar things or just be related. Maybe he kind of does see through those on some sort of weird level if we're kind of planning a bit of a backstory for this guy. I like that, and kind of ties in with that alien look, the fact that it is this massive departure from your typical human look or feel, and that instead it is actually this funky, weird thing that has, growth coming out of its head that kind of resembles the eyes to some fashion, at least in color. Very, very cool. And very, very great way of communicating this alien look. Also love the rest of the body using these glow-in-the-dark pieces here. Is another effective way of communicating Neptune. The Neptune itself kind of has very similar color scheme to it. So again, another great idea to help to communicate Neptune to some degree. I also love the claws kind of coming out of the Tachydoc's head here that are used for his arms. Kind of cool, the sort of shapes that they form, kind of how the mouth of the Tachydoc's head kind of flows into the arms, and these claws kind of just slightly hide behind that. I don't know, just interesting look for the body there, and again, quite alien looking and nice. Also, the ambiguity in the legs. Part of me goes, oh, these guys could be little, plant creatures that grow out of the ground, and kind of the way that these oh goodness, what's his name? I'm gonna have to Google this. Nocturne! Ha-ha! Got it! Those Nocturne heads there, the way that they sort of flow into the ground like that, kind of maybe looks a bit like roots sort of, burrowing into the ground, or it could even just sort of be, he's kind of more like fish-like, and he's just got some sort of weird funky squid legs or something, or it's just some other unique leg design, or maybe he's a little bit slug-like, and he just sort of kind of moves forward or something, I kind of like it. It's not quite. It's clear, but it's not clear at the same time. It's this thing of it's very different, right? And I think that's a very welcome addition. The fact that this is such an alien mock and it has very unconventional legs is perfect to it, and it does so much for this unique character. And I like that. So yeah, if you are building some sort of unique alien thing, doing stuff like that where you have legs or arms or a head or something that is a departure from the norm. That's definitely a nice route to go, and I like it on this mock a lot. Very cool. This is a mock by MC Lego Boy, and it's called the Europan Sea Flyer. Flea? Let's go with that. So MC Lego Boy gave this a really interesting kind of backstory, I guess, or at least as a unique take on the theme. He was talking about how, of course, his sub-theme was Jupiter, and he's saying that Europa is one of Jupiter's many moons, and that scientists believe that it could have the potential to support life because it is covered in a thick layer of ice that is overtop a vast ocean underneath. So he's sort of going, oh, maybe these guys could have some sort of funky sea creatures living below, and maybe here's what they might look like. So I think that's a really unique take on the theme. Always a good thing to do a bit of research on, whatever it is that you're kind of basing a mock off of, and take a bit of a deeper look into it. Even if it's something you already think you know a lot about, give it a bit of a research. You might find something you never even thought about. It's that thing of, maybe you like one specific movie, and then you watch some behind-the-scenes stuff with the directors talking, or some of the cast and crew, and you go like, oh wow, I didn't even realize that was inspired by, this folklore or this myth, or who'd have thought that this was some concept art that they were planning, or this was an old concept that they threw away and did away with, or they edited around this, or blah, 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 and you learn something new. So yeah, it never hurts to do a bit of research and see if that could inform the mock to some degree. Besides the point though, really, really love this sort of funky serpentine look that this guy has, how all of these claw pieces on the sort of spine and the sides here kind of flow out and look like all these different fish gills and, not fish gills, fish like, flippers? What are they called? Fins, that's the word I'm looking for. All the sort of different things relating to fishes, how they're sort of flowing out like that. The different sizes, the different shapes, the different colors and consistencies to them, I think is very accurate to a typical kind of creature that this is sort of taking notes from that we see in our world. And, MC Lego Boy's kind of playing around with that to some degree so that it looks a bit more alien and fitting to one of the many moons of Jupiter. Also quite like the head design here, using one of the old Viking sea serpent headpieces like that, adding some scary big teeth to it and some big old eyes and making him look quite scary and menacing. Looks fantastic. And I also love all the studs on the bottom and even some towards the top here on this mock, kind of giving him this funky luminous look. And you can totally imagine seeing this thing swimming in the dark deeps below on the planet, and all of these sort of things sort of illuminating in the water and looking quite scary and quite cool at the same time. So yeah, I really, really like that. A really funky alien looking kind of sea serpent, and a very unique take on the theme. I quite like it. Now, speaking of unique takes on themes, the next two mocks are taking the solar system idea and taking them in some very different directions, which of course the judges love it when people do that. So let's take a look at them. The first one is by Neves and is called Pluto and Cerberus. So of course, this is, as Dylan says here in the description, the god Pluto is basically the Roman bootleg of Hades. So he built his pet dog Cerberus as well, because kind of fits very nicely there with the theme, which that was essentially what the judges were even saying you could do. They gave you the solar system planets, but there's no reason you couldn't build the Roman gods associated with it as well, or have taken it in an entirely different direction. So yeah, let's talk about this guy here. Love all these cloth additions here, using some of these Chirrut Imwe capes, but flipping them, because one side of the Chirrut Imwe capes has black additions to it, the other side is just pure dark red, so he sort of folded that up a bit and covered up the black areas, and it looks like an entirely dark red kind of cloth, which is very fitting for a sort of, a god like this. And also love the use of tan throughout this, and it kind of looking like, he's bare-chested and kind of resembling flesh as well, And majority of these pieces seem to be from General Grievous, the CCBS Star Wars Ultra Build set, and a few other various tan system pieces, some Throwbot pieces, a few other tan pieces thrown in there that are Bionicle and stuff like that. But, overall a relatively simple construction, but still very much and very effectively illustrating the look of a god. Very, very cool. And these little gold additions here at the top, as well as this headdress, or headpiece rather, up the top here, very, very effective at communicating that god, that ancient god look. And the beard there, lovely addition, very much helps as well. I also love this sort of simplistic staff as well. This beautiful gold highlight and the shape to it, very, very effective. Now going to Cerberus, the big three-eyed, or three-headed dog here, in this case also three-eyed dog. Really like it. I like the fact that he has just given them sort of, Cyclops mono eyes here. Looks really cool. And also using those Han Solo, shoulder pieces there to kind of form the lower jaw on these guys. I think that's, it's a clever little part use there and kind of forms this very funky looking head. It's very effective. And Dylan was also sort of saying, he really liked the idea of, he wanted to build more than just Pluto. He also wanted to build the dog to go with it as well, just so he had a little bit more. Maybe he just sort of thought the other mock was just not quite enough for what he wanted to enter and wanted to build something else to go with it. So that's always something to consider, whether it's for a contest or something else, is can you kind of give it a bit of a companion thing, or, maybe like a toy for it to play with, or a weapon that it has, or, like a vehicle, or just some sort of other addition that the character would likely have, or a pet like this, something like that. That's very fitting, and definitely something you can easily do in a contest as well, because then technically you're kind of entering something a little bit extra, but it still works with the mock. Depending on the contest. I think Biocup you'd be totally safe like Dylan is here, but depending on the contest, it might be the case of, no, you can only enter the one thing, don't give it a companion or anything, but that just comes down to the contest that you're entering, depending on what that is. But by all means, that's a fun idea to do, and a really clever idea to do, because you can get a little extra few bonus points there. And if you feel like the mock that you've made doesn't quite cut it, maybe you can find something else to add to it that can definitely help out there. Really cool. So very nice work there, Dylan. Very, very awesome, clever take on the theme. But speaking of clever takes on the theme, let's head on over to Alex Park Designs and his mock, which is Freddie Mercury. So of course, the theme that he had here was Mercury, and he built the legend that is Freddie Mercury from the band Queen. Of course, perfectly fits. His last name is Mercury. Ding dong, it works. Really, really nicely done. I think I'm having such a good time. You know what? I'm having a ball looking at this mock. Like I said, great take on the theme. Really love the head design on this guy. A little bit more system heavy, but the choice of using that Technic brick piece there with the circular pinhole in there. Really clever way of illustrating him, looking like he's singing. Very clever mustache design there. Love that. Brilliant color layering throughout this, just pure black pants, and then it kind of looking like he has the white shirt under, and that iconic yellow jacket over the top there too. Looks very much perfect. You can easily tell the difference between the items of clothing because of how he's layered those colors. It looks great. The mic stand here and the microphone as well. Very clever, simple design, but it works very, very well. And also just brilliant posing, very, very fitting for Freddie. And also a really, really clever way that he's photographed this, kind of having this sort of top-down angle, and just the way that he's sort of shown off the mock. There might be little things here, kind of like around the torso here, the specific design for the jacket, using these system pieces here to kind of give it the sort of frills on the frilly bits, giving it that. I imagine from some angles it might not be as flattering. I think it still would look pretty darn good, but I certainly think from the specific angle he's taken, he's really made them look even cooler. And I think that's, of course, a good idea. You only have to submit one photo for the Biocup. Why not make it, why not cheat a little bit with the photography to make your mock look even better than it already is? I think that's a brilliant idea. And by no means is that cheating. It's just the way you've done it. It's a cool idea. It's a cool concept. And overall, yeah, a brilliant, brilliant mock. I'd certainly love to see him build the rest of the band and take a few more pictures with this guy. And Alex was even saying in some of the comments on Flickr that he was considering revisiting the mock as well. So would love to see that revisited. I think this looks fantastic. So super cool. That has been a few mocks that were entered into round 1 of the Biocup. Like I said, stay tuned for the Biocup roundup as we cover basically everything else that's been entered in the contest. I haven't filmed that yet because Biocup isn't over yet, so I can't, but I'll get to it very soon. So once the contest has, or once round 1 has concluded and the judges have announced the winners and whatever the next round is, I will post the roundup for that. It takes a little bit to edit those, but it'll be out in relative time. And then, again, the coverage will continue for the next round. I'm thinking as well, just because just with the nature of the rounds getting a bit shorter now, I think the way that I'll do episodes for Biocup coverage from now on will just simply be, as soon as the round comes out, we'll do an episode on the theme. So whether you're entering or not, I'll just cover a few mocks that have not been entered in the Biocup that relate to whatever the theme is. Then after that, I'll do like this episode where I do one episode covering some of the mocks that have been entered, and then I'll do the roundup, which covers everything in that round. And speculates about what'll go on next, who might win, and just general chit chat about Biocup. So basically 3 episodes per round in that regard. I think that's fair. In the preliminaries I did, I think 4, maybe more. I think it was just 4. And in the past I would do many, many more than that. But I don't know. I think that's a pretty healthy number, and I think that's enough to cover the cup. Especially I was finding as well with the roundup and some of the other episodes I'd done before that, I was kind of repeating myself, which not that I think that's necessarily an issue, but just for convenience sake, I think it's best to just do that. And still, it's 3 whole episodes, possibly 4, depending on how I'm feeling, on each round of the Biocup. I think that's more than enough content. Plus, you get your bis on Saturdays as well, so more than enough content for you. Hopefully you're enjoying the Biocup 2019 coverage, and hopefully you will check the links in the description and check out some of the other stuff that these talented builders have made. They've made some great stuff, and they deserve a little bit more love. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode of the Biocup 2019 coverage. You have a good day now. Bye for now.